Something has changed in Iran, and it is not just visible in protests or headlines. It is visible in daily life, in quiet conversations, in empty pauses, and in the way people now describe their own country. The word collapse is being used more often, not by politicians or foreign governments, but by ordinary citizens, analysts, and observers watching life inside Iran strain in real time. This does not mean collapse has already happened. It means the conditions that make people use that word are becoming impossible to ignore. To understand what is really happening, you need to stay with this analysis until the end, because the truth is not found in slogans, but in patterns that unfold slowly, for years. Iran's Islamic regime survived pressure by maintaining a balance. It controlled politics tightly, but allowed daily life to function just enough to keep society moving. That balance is now under severe strain. What people are reacting to today is not a single crisis, but the feeling that multiple systems are failing at the same time. Water shortages, power cuts, prices that change faster than wages, services that appear, disappear, then reappear without explanation. When these problems overlap, people stop asking when things will improve and start asking whether the system still works at all. The idea of collapse does not begin with ideology. It begins with routine. Across large parts of Iran, basic services no longer operate in predictable ways. Water access has become unreliable. Electricity cuts interrupt homes, shops, and workplaces. These are not new problems, but their frequency has increased and their duration has lengthened. What once felt like inconvenience now feels like uncertainty. Families no longer assume that tomorrow will work the same way today did. That change in expectation is critical. At the same time, economic pressure has intensified. Wages have failed to keep pace with the cost of food, housing, and transportation. Even when income is calculated in United States dollars, purchasing power keeps falling. For many households, a full month of work no longer guarantees basic stability. Rent, food, fuel, and medicine compete for limited income. Planning ahead becomes nearly impossible when essentials themselves are unstable. This is where the language of collapse begins to appear. Not because institutions have disappeared, but because effort no longer produces security. From an analytical perspective, this does not yet confirm collapse. It confirms strain. Infrastructure stress limits economic activity. Economic stress reshapes behavior. Families cut spending. Businesses delay decisions. Communities become cautious. These are rational responses to pressure. But when these reactions spread across society, perception changes. Temporary disruption begins to feel permanent. Daily life stops feeling reliable. That psychological shift is where collapse language enters public discussion. As daily life became more unstable, tension moved toward how the state responded. This is where the narrative deepened. Across Iran, authorities suspended or reduced normal operations. Government offices slowed activity. Schools and universities paused in-person instruction. Administrative and financial processes became delayed or unclear. Official explanations described these measures as temporary and precautionary. Yet for the public, the experience felt different. Services closed without clear timelines. Procedures varied by region. Coordination appeared uneven. Analytically, these actions suggest a system operating in emergency mode, not a system that has failed. But perception is shaped by experience, not internal logic. When offices close, people interpret absence as weakness. In stable systems, emergency measures preserve visibility and continuity. In this case, continuity itself felt fragile. Citizens do not interact with abstract power. They interact with permits, payments, schools, and offices. When those contact points fade, confidence erodes rapidly. The economic impact of these pauses compounded the pressure. Businesses relying on permits or banking access faced delays. Workers lost income. Small disruptions accumulated into larger slowdowns. What might have been manageable on its own became overwhelming in combination. This is why the phrase regime crisis entered public discussion. Protests became more frequent and more sustained. Demonstrations did not always disperse quickly. Participants often remained, watching how authorities reacted. In online discussion, this behavior was described by some as open defiance, even mutiny. From an analytical standpoint, that label moves faster than the evidence. Mutiny implies organized refusal, leadership, and coordination. What is visible instead is hesitation. Enforcement varies by location. In some areas, security presence is cautious. In others, responses are delayed or inconsistent. Decisions appear local rather than centralized. This pattern suggests pressure on enforcement capacity, not collapse of command. When systems are under strain, discretion increases. Officers rely on judgment rather than rigid procedure. That is a sign of stress, not rebellion. However, perception matters. Uneven enforcement feels significant to the public. It suggests that rules are no longer applied consistently. Over time, this perception feeds narratives of internal fracture. The line between hesitation and defiance becomes blurred. That is how the language of mutiny spreads, not because it is confirmed, but because uncertainty invites interpretation. Communication played a powerful role in amplifying this uncertainty. Official messaging arrived later than expected and often lacked detail. Statements emphasized calm and endurance, but offered few timelines or clear explanations. From inside the system, this caution may be rational. From outside, it feels like silence. In centralized systems, clarity is critical. When guidance varies across agencies and regions, responsibility shifts downward. Responses diverge. What emerges is not coordinated failure, but uneven direction. For the public, silence becomes meaning. Delay becomes doubt. Families postpone decisions. Businesses hesitate. Communities prepare for multiple scenarios instead of one clear future. Uncertainty becomes normal. Institutions may still function, but confidence depends on visibility. When visibility declines, trust follows. This is how collapse narratives spread without confirmation. Not because the system has ended, but because people no longer feel anchored. Economic pressure deepened this shift further. Inflation in Iran is not just a financial issue. It is a psychological one. Prices rise faster than incomes. Savings lose value. Unexpected expenses carry heavy consequences. Life becomes a series of calculations that never balance. From an analytical perspective, this reflects sustained economic strain, not immediate collapse. But for those living inside it, perception follows experience. When work no longer guarantees survival, people begin to question the system itself. This breakdown in economic arithmetic matters deeply. Modern systems rely on the assumption that effort leads to stability. When that relationship weakens, legitimacy erodes. Inflation becomes a force that reshapes trust. Each price increase reinforces the sense that control is slipping. Each delay in payment deepens anxiety. Collapse language spreads through repetition. It's not through one dramatic shock. As the state acknowledged limits and fiscal strain, public expectations shifted again. Official language emphasized patience and endurance. While framed as realism, these messages signaled that the regime could no longer fully shield society from economic pressure. Households adjusted accordingly. Spending became cautious. Informal support networks grew more important. Businesses delayed hiring and reduced inventory. Credit tightened. The economy slowed not because of new rules, but because belief changed. This phase reveals something critical. Systems depend not only on resources, but on expectation. When expectation shifts from stability to survival, fragility becomes visible. This is why collapse narratives deepen at this stage. Not because institutions stop working, but because the promise behind them feels thin. One place where this loss of confidence becomes visible is the bazaar. For decades, the bazaar reflected economic rhythm and resilience. As pressure intensified, activity slowed. Merchants shortened hours. Inventory decisions were delayed. These were not political statements. They were risk calculations. When prices shift rapidly and currency expectations change, selling becomes uncertain. Holding cash feels unsafe. Replacing goods becomes risky. Analytically, bizarre hesitation does not equal collapse. Trade continues. Markets exist, but symbolically, the bizarre matters. It slowed down signals that trust has withdrawn from the core of economic life. When the bizarre hesitates, disruption spreads outward. Goods arrive late. Selection narrows. Prices swing more sharply. This is why analysts often view bizarre behavior as an early indicator of deeper stress. As economic pressure continued, public conversation changed. Early frustration focused on coping. Later, questions turned toward responsibility and direction. People began asking not just how to survive, but why stability had vanished. This shift explains why the phrase Islamic regime crisis gained traction. It did not emerge from organized opposition. It emerged from doubt. Authority is tested not only by resistance, but by expectation. When expectations fall faster than conditions improve, skepticism spreads. Technical fixes lose power. Even genuine reforms struggle to reassure when trust is already damaged. This is a fragile moment for any system. Multiple paths remain possible. Societies can adapt, reform, or endure prolonged strain. Collapse is not guaranteed, but vulnerability is real. Inside the system, stress also affects those tasked with enforcing order. Law enforcement officers, civil servants, and administrators face the same economic pressure as everyone else. Rising costs, delayed compensation, shrinking security. Professional roles no longer protect against instability. Behavior shifts toward caution. Rules are followed narrowly. Initiative declines. Avoiding risk becomes more important than asserting control. These adjustments appear unevenly. Some areas remain tightly controlled. Others respond slowly. Administrative delays grow. From outside, this looks like division. From inside, it reflects capacity under pressure. Yet perception again shapes narrative. Uneven response fuels speculation about internal fracture. The idea spreads faster than evidence can catch up. History rarely announces itself clearly. It unfolds through moments that demand interpretation. Iran appears to be in such a moment now. Daily life pressure, economic strain, institutional hesitation, and shifting expectations have converged. That convergence explains why the word collapse is circulating so widely. Not as a verdict, but as an attempt to describe accumulated stress. This does not mean the Islamic regime has already fallen. It means the margin for error has narrowed. Small missteps carry greater risk. Confidence is fragile. Authority is judged by performance, not promises. Language reflects anxiety more than destiny. Collapse, when it happens, is not sudden. It is shaped by pressure, perception, and response over time. What we are witnessing in Iran is not an ending, but a test. Whether this period leads to reform, reorganization, prolonged instability, or eventual breakdown will depend on choices made gradually. Not declarations made overnight. History will decide what this moment becomes. For now, Iran stands at a point where strain is visible, trust is thin, and the future remains open. The language of collapse tells us how the moment feels, not how it will end. If you want to continue following this analysis as events develop, stay connected, share your thoughts in the comments, and support the work so deeper breakdowns like this can continue.